Guys, remember we have different functions here. Here's f of g, and here's f of x and g of x. So we're going to add these together and leave them in terms of x. So remember, f of x is x squared plus 4x. Now we're going to add g of x, and g of x, guys, that is just one term. That is just x plus 2. And these are not like terms, guys. That is all I can do with that. However, you have a restriction on domain. Remember, we are only worried about real numbers right now. So, x plus 2 has to be greater than or equal to 0. Remember, it can't equal 0. It's not in a fraction. So, I know that my domain has to be greater than or equal to a negative 2. So when we write that in interval notation, guys, it is going to be negative 2 to positive infinity. And remember that negative 2 does get a bracket because we can include 0. Restrict the domain when you have a square root symbol. Let's go ahead and look at part B. So for part B, guys, we are going to be subtracting. Don't forget to distribute that negative. So when we subtract, let me go ahead and recopy f of x. So x squared plus 4x. And then I'm going to write minus, and I'm going to drop h in my parentheses. I've left some space there. And h is just 3x minus 5. So don't forget, you're going to distribute your negative there, guys. So we're going to have x squared plus 4x minus 3x and then plus a 5. And of course, the only thing we can do is combine the inside terms. So that's going to be x squared plus x minus 5. And there's not any restriction on that. So that's as far as we can take part B.
Is it minus 5 or plus 5?
Oh, I'm so sorry, guys. Thank you. It's a plus 5. It is a plus 5. Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and look at C. So C is just multiplying again, guys. So remember, f of x is x squared plus 4x. And then we're going to multiply it by h. And remember, h was just 3x minus 5. So just FOILing out and mind your terms and mind your signs. So x squared times 3x is going to be 3x to the third. Your two outside terms, go ahead and multiply those. And then don't forget we have two inside terms, and do not forget that this is going to be x squared. And your two last terms is just going to be a negative 20x. All right, guys, go ahead and combine your like terms. We're going to have 3x to the third plus 7x squared minus 20x. And I know that it looks like we want to take out like some things. Just do not factor, leave it like that. And we don't have any restrictions on the domain. The domain for this is all real numbers. If there's no restrictions, we understand it to be all real numbers. All right, guys, we totally need to talk about problem D, because problem D is going to have a square root in the denominator. And we need to remember what happens when we have a square root in the denominator. All right, so we have f divided by g. So remember, f is x squared plus 4x. And then g is your root, which is x plus 2. So looking at this right now, you got a denominator and you have a square root in the denominator. So remember, for this, it is not part equal. It just cannot equal 0 and it cannot be negative. We cannot have it part equal in a denominator. So when we restrict our domain, we know x has to be greater than a negative 2. I'm going to go ahead and write that in interval notation. Remember, no brackets. Okay, and then from here, guys, we need to talk about rationalizing the denominator. You did this maybe once or twice in Algebra 2, but I know you guys did it in geometry. So remember, you cannot have a root below a fraction bar. So what we're going to do is we are going to multiply by that root to get it out. Because remember, when you square something that's a root, the root goes away. So I'm going to take that fraction. Whoops. I'm going to take that fraction. I'm going to rationalize the denominator just by multiplying the top and the bottom by that exact root. So remember, just remember, this is a form of 1. We're just multiplying that fraction by a form of 1. It's not changing the value. So remember, the root times the root makes the root go away. So at the bottom, we are good. We have x plus 2. So now let's talk about the top. So remember, we're multiplying. So we have one term, guys. That is one term times 2 terms. It's just the distributive property. It would just be like if you had, let me show you. This is one term. And you would just distribute. So your square root symbol is considered one term. So when we distribute, it's going to be x squared times the root of x plus 2. Just stick them in front. This root times positive 4x. And now, if you guys remember, we had a restricted domain, negative infinity to negative 2. However, when we rationalized, did our denominator change? Yes, it's not in the square root symbol anymore. So notice that this now has a domain of everything except x not equaling a negative 2. So we know it can be negative infinity all the way up to negative 2. And then, of course, negative 2 to positive infinity. Every time your denominator changes, you have to go back and address domain. Always address domain, guys. So this is our final answer. Once the denominator is rationalized. Do you guys have any questions on part D?